When you guys first started talking about the character, how far along were you in writing? Was it completely finished, or did you have conversations that shaped the way that the character was going to come together?
The script was completely finished, and when Jake was available and suddenly we really wanted Jake to play the part, I flew to Atlanta and he was doing Prisoners, and we sat down to dinner. And the first question he asked me was, how do you see the film? And I said, I see it as a success story. And he just burst out laughing. He said, that's exactly the way I see it. It takes all moral judgment off the character, which allows the character to flourish, to become a human being rather than a reductive label of a sociopath or whatever diagnostic tool you wanted to apply to the character. And it just, I think, as a writer, it liberated me writing it. And I know as an actor, when I said that, I think Jake realized, yes, that's going to allow me. People sometimes ask, you were surprised with what he did with the darkness of the character. And I'm always continually surprised by the inner landscape of the character that he discovered, the human landscape that he discovered.
Go ahead.
I mean, and I would just say that I just stuck totally to the word. I mean, it was word for word, period for period. There are not many commas, because there's very little hesitation. When Lou has a direction or a directive, he continues through it almost like a 50 caliber machine gun. You know, I mean, that's I think about that in the Cabanita scene, is that I've been equipped with this like 50 caliber machine gun of dialogue, and she has a spoon, you know, and it is a testament to her as an actor. And you know, the irony of that scene is that she has her hand on my leg the entire scene under the table. She did while we were doing it.
We didn't see that in the edit.
So I mean, she was trying in every way she could. She was going down, but she really, yeah, no, yeah, well, that's our backstory, but that was really, you know, that is a testament to her choices, because I expected to come in there and win, not only as the character, but also as the actor in a way, knowing I had all that stuff that he had given me. And she threw me off at every turn, you know, and that was what was the fun part of doing the scene, you know. Not only was it brilliantly written and we kind of knew where we were going and it was headed to this great place we knew storytelling-wise, but as actors, you know, she just kept throwing me off. And, you know, she would wink at me. There were so many things you did to me on my coverage. And then, weirdly, being married to the writer-director was also encouraging me when I
Rene
would get it. Yeah, they're married, yeah.
So I think the only argument that Dan and I had a disagreement is that he really saw Nina as more of a victim, and I said to him, no, I'm in control. So that's not true. I wasn't completely in control. I did make my own decisions. However, I didn't think of myself completely as a victim, because if he wasn't going to bring me the goods, then I wasn't going to give him whatever it was we were doing behind
Maybe they'll
closed
tell us
doors.
what they do behind closed doors, because I'm curious.
Well, but that's a clear choice that you make in the screenplay, or did you actually have that you reference something that you have dealt with so little exposition of the story. I wonder, Jake, as you're talking with your writer-director, there's very little exposition. Is that something that you guys said from the get-go was really important?
Well, obviously the script began that way, but there were more clues actually, and there were scenes with a few more clues as to who Lou was, a little bit of his backstory, and particularly in the apartment, production design-wise, there were just more clues. But I think that's what makes him this enigma, and part of the power of the story is that he is, because I feel like he's a bit of a walking metaphor. And that was what we talked about a lot, that he's the creation, he's our creation, he's a modern day creation. And he couldn't really exist at any other time, and he, for me specifically, had a backstory, but I don't think it was necessary for the audience. And I think actually it would only have hurt had we known really where he came from, because he really comes from our own minds. He talked, one of our first discussions was about the topography of Los Angeles and how, Lou was an animal, one of those animals that came down at night from the mountains, the mountain ranges, and then down to the metropolis. And as he started speaking about him in this primal way, it just really started getting me thinking. And there were a number of references in the script to coyotes, And anybody who's obviously lived in, the southern part of Los Angeles or, of California really, knows coyotes and, your interaction with them. And growing up here, many times I've crossed paths with a coyote, and they looked at me very much the way I thought Lou would look at most of his prey, and so we just decided, Lou is a coyote. There was an evolution of him with the camera. At first it was almost like a puppy, and then inevitably, like, he became really agile with it. He started adding different things to it, and we spent with Robert Elswit. We went with these two brothers who happen to be real stringers, real Nightcrawlers here in LA, and we copied their cameras and we copied everything they had as Lou became agile and a real professional. But the way he moved was very important to me while he was carrying that camera, and really trying to move like a coyote, and then make him look like him, look like a coyote, and be starving, really, like they are.
What comes through when I watch the film is that hunger, the unspoken hunger. There's just that he's capable of eating a person or an idea or a watch or anything. It's just there's this, he will suck things into him, and to me, you could look at the physical transformation and say, well, that's the big benefit of losing the weight. But to me, in addition to that, was this undefined quality that I see in every frame.
Did it affect you mentally? I mean, did you actually find yourself changing that way?
Yes, I mean, there's a chemical change when you work nights anyway. We all know that. But then also when you're not eating and you're working nights, you can times that by 4. But I think that did nothing but, when I read the Word at first, the Word was a real guide for me, and I say that because this was Lou's Bible, this script. One of the very first lines he says is, "I was under the opinion that this was a detour." And that was for me the biggest directive of who he was. He just changed things to his own opinion, and he had to move forward that way. And he'd eat anything in his path.
There's other little flourishes that he did that were a wonderful surprise. The day he put his hair up in the bun, I was like, oh my God, that's totally wild. And yeah, I'm gonna wear a little scrunchie on my wrist through the whole movie. I'm like, oh man, that's just. It all makes sense now, but there was a time that it was wow, this is just wild.
We would call that going ninja. I would say, do you want me to go ninja in the scene?
I want to ask two producers at the end about shooting in Los Angeles. You were one at the very end of, I think, the production, pre-production. You got a California incentive.
We considered briefly Shreveport, Louisiana, only because they had an incentive, and we didn't know whether or not we would get it. You apply for the lottery on July 1st, and you find out months later, so we had to start prepping the movie and start spending money before we knew whether or not we would be a recipient. And it was a gamble, but we decided that it was a gamble worth taking because it was a beg, borrow, steal production, and we had the highest quality professionals working for us because we were in Los Angeles.
We couldn't have gone to Shreveport and made the movie. We couldn't have gone to Albuquerque.
No, I'm saying we
couldn't have
never
done.
were going to do that.
You had to play that card.
we were, but we had to say we could do it maybe. I mean, the reason that the movie, because we made this movie for so little money. I mean, we're supposed to say under 10, but we're well under 10, and and it should really cost 18 or something like that. And the reason that the reason that it worked out wasn't just the lottery, it's the fact also of, and everybody in this room kind of knows how this works. I mean, we were making a movie from October to December. People could stay home for Christmas before they took their big money job someplace else. So we just loaded on all these just top people. We started so we have this Ferrari camera department, and we had
well, let's
putting
talk
a Ferrari
about
engine in a
cinematographer
go-kart.
Robert Elswit. We should certainly give him a shout out.
Sir Robert Elswit.
But people could, you could have Andy Rollins be your camera operator. You could have everybody we had. They could stay at home and say, "Honey, I'm going to stay home for Christmas."
Right.
And I'll be home for Christmas, and I won't make any money. We'll be here, and that's why the movie is what it is. And it's shooting in L.A. and nobody else was here.
I didn't really try to apply any moral judgment to local television news. I feel it's a very complicated system that's in place. They're reacting to a very real economic need, which is that it turns out that people like to watch these images, and it's like saying, like, if should we be angry at the people who make fast food? Well, it turns out we like fast food, and I think the difference between fast food and what the local television news does is that fast food comes with how many calories in each meal. And so you can actually see how dangerous it is for you versus what you watch on local television news. And you might be aware that they're doing this, but I don't think anybody's fully aware of perhaps what the toll is for our society in terms of us all walking around in some vague state of fear all the time. and being afraid of anybody who shows up in our neighborhood who we don't know, or politicians who point to the crime stories on television as a way of making policy.
If the movie succeeds the way you intended it to, what do you hope people are thinking about or talking about after they've seen the film?
I hope that people look at the film and come away with thinking that the problem in this story is not Lou, although Lou is a problem for some people in the story. It's the problem is the society that created him and rewards him. And I firmly believe, and Jake and I had conversations about this, I firmly believe in the writing of it, that if you came back in 10 years, Lou would be running a major multinational corporation. I mean that in all seriousness. I think all the elements or qualities that make Lou survive at nighttime in Los Angeles, driving around these crime scenes, would serve him extraordinarily well in the boardroom. And I think what Lou does is small potatoes compared to CEOs who take over a company and break it up into aggregate parts and put 50,000 people out of work and then build a 500-foot yacht and wind up on the cover of Business Week magazine for their acumen. And I mean that seriously. And I feel that we live in a world that's increasingly leaning that way, and perhaps to look around you and try to say, who do I know like that? What part of me is like that? To some level of self-awareness, hopefully.